And now it is time for Chapter 18 of To Kill a Mockingbird. We are into the trial of Tom Robinson. We just heard from the Sheriff Heck Tate, as well as Bob Ewell, who is Mayella Ewell's dad. They, to use a pun, they're kind of a trashy family. They live by the dump, but they are a whole other different kind of quality. They are poor, and they say, Scott says in chapter 17 that even if, whether you're in the Depression or times are very prosperous, it doesn't matter. They live off of the state, they don't have money, they're rough. And she says at one point the only difference between Ewell and the blacks in the community is that if he scrubs hard enough, his skin is white. She is not trying to say that she thinks that black people are all scum. I think what she's saying is he's for sure no different. He lives the same way. He lives a barely living. But we do know that the people that we have met in the black community are not drinkers, are not rude, do not use rough language or any of that type of a thing. So we learned in the trial that Mayella was hit on the left side of her face, which indicates that it would be a right-handed person who would have hit her. So, and we know that her father is, actually I lied, she was hit on the right side of her face. It would have had to be a left-handed person. And her father is left-handed, and so he could have hit her. Possible. That would mean they would be totally lying, but we will see. Atticus talked a lot about, was there a doctor, was there a doctor, was there a doctor? And that would be to verify that she had actually been raped. So we will see. Next up on the stand, Mayella Ewell. Chapter 18, page 239. But someone was booming again. Mayella Ewell! A young girl walked to the witness stand. As she raised her hand and swore that the evidence she gave would be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help her God, she seemed somehow fragile looking. But when she sat facing us in the witness chair, she became what she was, a thick-bodied girl accustomed to strenuous labor. In Macomb County, it was easy to tell when someone bathed regularly as opposed to yearly libations. Mr. Ewell had a scalded look, as if an overnight soaking had deprived him of protective layers of dirt. His skin appeared to be sensitive to the elements. Mayella looked as if she tried to keep clean, and I was reminded of the row of red geraniums in the Ewell yard. Mr. Gilmer asked Mayella to tell the jury in her own words what happened on the evening of November 21st last year. Just in her own words, please. Mayella sat silently. Where were you at dusk on that evening? Began Mr. Gilmer patiently. On the porch. Which porch? There ain't but one. The front porch. What were you doing on the porch? Nothing. Judge Taylor said, just tell us what happened. You can do that, can't you? Mayella stared at him and burst into tears. She covered her mouth with her hand and sobbed. Judge Taylor let her cry for a while, and then he said, That's enough now. Now don't be afraid of anybody here as long as you tell the truth. All this is strange to you, I know, but you've got nothing to be ashamed of and nothing to fear. Now what are you scared of? Mayella said something behind her hands. What was that? Asked the judge. Him, she sobbed, pointing at Atticus. Mr. Finch? She nodded vigorously, saying, Don't want him doing me like he done Papa, trying to make him out of left-handed. Judge Taylor scratched his thick white hair. It was plain that he'd never been confronted with a problem of this kind. How old are you? He asked. 19 and a half, Mayella said. Judge Taylor cleared his throat and tried unsuccessfully to speak in soothing tones. Mr. Fitch has no idea of scaring you, he growled, and if he did, I'm here to stop him. That's one thing I'm sitting up here for. Now, you're a big girl, so you just sit up straight and you just tell us what happened to you. You can do that, can't you? I whispered to Jem. Has she got good sense? Jem was squinting down at the witness stand. Can't tell yet, he said. She's got enough sense to get the judge sorry for her, but she might just be, I don't know. Mollified, Mayella gave Atticus a terrified final glance and said to Mr. Gilmore, Well, sir, I was on the porch and he came along, you see, and there was this old chiffro in the yard. Papa brought it in to chop up for Ken, and Papa told me to do it, but while he was off in the woods, but I wasn't feeling strong enough then. So he came by. Well, who is he? Mayella pointed to Tom Robinson. I'll have to ask you to be more specific, please, said Mr. Gilmore. The reporter can't put down gestures very well. That yonder, she said. Robinson. And then what happened? I said, Come here and bust up this shift roll for me. I got a nickel for you. He could have done it easy enough, he could. So he come in the yard, and I went in the house to get him the nickel, and I turned around. Before I knew it, he was on me, just run up behind me, he did. He got me around the neck and cussing me and saying dirt, and I fought and I howled, but he had me around the neck, and he hit me again and again. Mr. Gilmore waited for Mayella to collect herself. She had twisted her handkerchief into a sweaty rope, and when she opened it to wipe her face, it was a mass of creases in her hot hand. She waited for Mr. Gilmore to ask another question, but when he didn't, she said, He chucked me on the floor. He took advantage of me. Did you scream? Asked Mr. Gilmore. Did you scream and fight back? I reckon I did. I howled for all I was worth, and I kicked and howled as loud as I could. Then what happened? I don't remember too good, but the next thing I knew, Papa was in the room, standing over me, hollering, Who done it? Who done it? And then I sort of fainted, and the next thing I knew, Mr. Tate was pulling me off of the floor and leading me to the water bucket. Apparently, Mayella's recital had given her confidence, but it was not her father's brash kind. There was something stealthy about her, like a steady-eyed cat with a twitchy tail. You say that you fought him off as hard as you could. Fought him off tooth and nail, asked Mr. Gilmore. I positively did, Mayella echoed her father. You are positive that he took full advantage of you. Mayella's face contorted, and I was afraid that she would cry again. Instead, she said, He done what he was after. Mr. Gilmore called attention to the hot day by wiping his head with his hand. Well, that's all for the time being, he said pleasantly. But you stay there. I expect big bad Mr. Finch has some questions to ask you. State will not prejudice the witness against counsel for the defense, murmured Judge Taylor primly, at least not at this time. Atticus got up grinning, but instead of walking to the witness stand, he opened his coat and he hooked his thumbs in his vest, and then he walked slowly across the room to the windows. He looked out, but he didn't seem especially interested in what he saw. Then he turned and strolled back to the witness stand. From long years of experience, I could tell he was trying to come to a decision about something. Miss Mayella, he said, smiling, I won't try to scare you for a while, not yet. Now let's just get acquainted. How old are you? I said I was 19. I said it to the judge yonder. Mayella jerked her head resentfully at the bench. So you did, ma'am. You'll have to bear with me, Miss Mayella. I'm getting along, and I can't remember as well as I used to. But I ask you things you've already said before, but you'll give me an answer, won't you? Good. Well, I could see nothing in Mayell's expression to justify Atticus's assumption that he had secured her wholehearted cooperation. She looked at him furiously. I won't answer a word as long as you keep on mocking me, she said. Ma'am? Asked Atticus, startled. As long as you keep on making fun of me. Judge Taylor said, Mr. Finch is not making fun of you. What is the matter with you? Mayella looked from under her lowered eyelids at Atticus, but she said to the judge, "As long as he keep on calling me ma'am and say Miss Mayella, I don't have to take his sass. I ain't called upon to take it." Atticus resumed his stroll to the windows and let Judge Taylor handle this one. Judge Taylor was not the kind of figure that ever evoked pity, but I did feel a pang for him as he tried to explain. "Now that's just Mr. Finch's way," he told Mayella. "We've done business in this court for years and years, and Mr. Finch is always courteous to everybody. He's not trying to mock you. He's trying to be polite. That's just his way." The judge leaned back. "Atticus, let's get on with these proceedings and let the record show that the witness has not been sassed her views to the contrary." I wondered if anybody had ever called her ma'am or Miss Mayella in her life. Probably not, as she took offense to routine courtesy. What on earth was her life like? I soon found out. "You say you're 19, Atticus resumed. "How many sisters and brothers have you?" He walked from the window back to the stand. "7, she said, "and I wonder if they were all like the specimen I'd seen the first day I started to school." "You the eldest?" "The oldest." "Yes." "And how long has your mother been dead?" "I don't know, a long time." "Did you ever go to school?" "Reading right good, as Papa yonder." Mayella sounded like a Mr. Jingle in a book I'd been reading. How long did you go to school?" 2 years, 3, I don't know." Slowly but surely I began to see the pattern of Atticus's questions. From questions that Mr. Gilmore did not deem sufficiently irrelevant or immaterial to object to, Atticus was quietly building up before the jury a picture of the Ewell's home life. The jury learned the following things. Their relief check was far from enough to feed the family, and there was strong suspicion that Papa drank it up anyway. He sometimes was off in the swamp for days and came home sick. The weather was seldom cold enough to require shoes, but when it was, could make dandy ones from strips of old tires. The family hauled its water in buckets from a spring that ran out at one end of the dump, and they kept the surrounding area clear of trash. And it was everybody for himself as far as keeping clean went. If you wanted to wash, you hauled your own water. The younger children had perpetual colds and suffered from chronic groundage. And there was a lady who came around sometimes and asked Mayella why she didn't stay in school. She wrote down the answer with 2 members of the family reading and writing. There was no need for the rest of them to learn, and Papa needed them at home. "Miss Mayella," said Atticus, in spite of himself, "a 19-year-old girl like you must have friends. Who are your friends?" The witness frowned as if puzzled. "Friends?" "Yes, don't you have anyone near your age, or older, or younger, boys and girls, just ordinary friends?" Mayella's hostility, which had subsided to grudging neutrality, flared up again. "You making fun of me again, Mr. Finch?" Atticus let her question answer this. "Do you love your father, Miss Mayella?" was the next. "Love him? What do you mean?" "I mean, is he good to you? Is he easy to get along with?" "He's tolerable, except when..." Mayella looked at her father, who was sitting with his chair tipped against the rail. He sat up straight and waited for her to answer. "Except when nothing," said Mayella. I said he does tolerable." Mr. Ewell leaned back again. "Except when he's drinking," said Atticus so gently that Mayella nodded. "Does he ever go after you?" "How you mean?" When he's riled, has he ever beaten you?" Mayella looked around, down at the court reporter, up at the judge. "Answer the question, Miss Mayella," said Judge Taylor. "My pa's never touched a hair on my head in my life," she declared firmly. "He never touched me." Atticus's glasses had slipped a little, and he pushed them up on his nose. "Now we've had a good visit, Miss Mayella, and now I guess we'd better get to the case. You say that you asked Tom Robinson to come chop up a, what was it? A chiffon robe, old dresser full of drawers on one side. Was Tom Robinson well known to you? What do you mean? I mean, did you know who he was and where he lived? Mayella nodded. I knowed who he was. He passed the house every day. And was this the first time that you asked him to come inside the fence? Mayella jumped slightly at the question. Atticus was making his slow pilgrimage to the window, as he had been doing. He would ask a question and then look out, waiting for an answer. He did not see her involuntary jump, but it seemed to me that he knew that she'd moved. He turned around and he raised his eyebrows. Was, he began. Yes, it was. Why didn't you ever ask him to come inside the fence before? Mayella was prepared now. I did not. Certainly did not. One did not's enough, said Atticus serenely. You never asked him to do odd jobs for you before. I might have, conceded Mayella, but there were several plagues around. Well, can you remember any occasions? No. All right, now to what happened. You said Tom Robinson was behind you in the room when you turned around, that right? Yes. You said he got you around the neck cussing and saying dirt. Is that right? That's right. Atticus's memory had suddenly become accurate. You say he caught me and choked me and took advantage of me. Is that right? Well, that's what I said. Do you remember him beating you about the face? The witness hesitated. You seem sure that he choked you. All this time you were fighting back, remember? You kicked and hollered as loud as you could. Do you remember him beating you about the face? Mayella was silent. She seemed to be trying to get something clear to herself. I thought for a moment that she was doing Mr. Heck's Tate my trick of pretending there was a person in front of us. She glanced at Mr. Gilmer. It's an easy question, Miss Mayella, so I will try again. Do you remember him beating you about the face? Atticus's voice had lost its comfortableness, and he was speaking in his airy, detached, professional voice. Do you remember him beating you about the face? No, I don't recollect if he hit me. I mean, yes, I do. He hit me. Was your last sentence your answer? Huh? Yes, he hit me. I just don't remember. I just don't remember. It all happened so quick. Judge Taylor looked sternly at Mayella. Now, don't you cry, young lady, he began, as Atticus said. Let her cry if she wants to, Judge. We've got all the time in the world. Mayella sniffed wrathfully and looked at Atticus. I'll answer any question you got. You get me up here and mock me, will you? I'll answer you any question. That's fine, said Atticus. There's only a few more. Miss Mayella, not to be tedious, but you testified the defendant hit you, grabbed you around the neck, choked you, and took advantage. I want you to be sure that you have the right man. Will you identify the man who raped you? I will. That's him yonder. Atticus turned to the defendant. Tom, stand up. Let Miss Mayella have a good look at you. Is this the man, Miss Mayella? Tom Robinson's powerful shoulders rippled under his shirt. He rose to his feet and he stood with his right hand on the back of the chair. But he looked oddly off balance. But it was not the way he was standing. His left arm was fully 12 inches shorter than his right, and hung dead at his side. It ended in a small shriveled hand, and from as far away as the balcony I could see that he had no use of it. Scout, breathed Jim. Scout, look! Reverend, he's crippled. Reverend Sykes leaned across me and whispered to Jim, he got caught in a cotton gin, caught at Mr. Dolphus Raymond's cotton gin when he was a boy, like to bleed to death, tore all the muscle loose from bones. Atticus said, Is this the man who raped you? It most certainly is. Atticus's next question was one word long. How? Mayella raged. I don't know how he done it, but he done it. I said it all happened so fast, and now, let's just consider this calmly, said Atticus, but Mr. Gilmer interrupted with an objection. He was not irrelevant or material, but Atticus was browbeating the witness. Judge Taylor laughed outright. Sit down, Horace. He's doing nothing of the sort. If anything, the witness is browbeating an Atticus. Judge Taylor was the only person in the courtroom who laughed. Even the babies were still, and I suddenly wondered if they'd been smothered by their mother's breasts. Now, said Atticus, Miss Mayella, you have testified that the defendant choked and beat you, and you said that he snuck up behind you and knocked you cold. But you turned around, and there he was. Atticus was back behind his table, and he emphasized his words by tapping his knuckles on it. Do you wish to reconsider any of your testimony? You want me to say something that didn't happen? No, ma'am. I want you to say something that did happen. Now tell us once more what happened. I told her what happened. You testified that you turned around and there he was, and he choked you then. Yes. And then he released your throat and hit you. I said that he did. He blacked your left eye with his right fist. I ducked it and it glanced. That's what it did. I ducked and it glanced off. Mayella had finally seen the light. You are suddenly becoming clear on this point. A while ago you couldn't remember too well, could you? I said he hit me. All right. He choked you, he hit you, and then he raped you. That right? It most certainly is. You're a strong girl. What were you doing all that time, just standing there? I told you I hollered and kicked and fought. Atticus reached up and he took off his glasses, and he turned his good right eye to the witness and rained questions on her. Judge Taylor said, one question at a time, Atticus. Give the witness a chance to answer. All right. Why didn't you run? I tried. You tried to. And what kept you from it? He slung me down. That's what he did. He slung me down and he got on top of me. And you were screaming all this time. I certainly was. Well, then why didn't the other children hear you? Where were they? At the dump? Where were they? No answer. Why didn't your screams make 'em come running? The dump's closer than the woods, isn't it? No answer. Or didn't you scream until you saw your father in the window? You didn't think to scream until then, did you? No answer. Did you scream first at your father instead of at Tom Robinson? Was that it? No answer. Who beat you up, Tom Robinson or your father? No answer. What did your father see in the window? The crime of rape or the best defense of it? Why don't you tell the truth, child? Didn't Bob Ewell beat you up? When Atticus turned away from Mayella, she looked like his stomach hurt. He looked like his stomach hurt, but Mayella's face was a mixture of terror and fury. Atticus sat down warily and polished his glasses with his handkerchief. Suddenly, Mayella became articulate. I got something to say, she said. Atticus raised his head. Do you want to tell us what happened? But she did not hear the compassion in his invitation. I got something to say, and then I ain't saying no more. That one yonder took advantage of me, and if you fine fancy gentlemen don't want to do nothing about it, then you're all yellow, stinking cowards, a lot of you. Your fancy airs don't come to nothing. Your Mammon and Miss Mayella don't come to nothing, Mr. Finch. And then she burst into real tears. Her shoulders shook with angry sobs, and she was as good as her word. She answered no more questions, even when Mr. Gilmer tried to get her back on track. I guess if she hadn't been so poor and ignorant, Judge Taylor would have put her under the jail for contempt. She'd shown everybody in the courtroom. Somehow Atticus had hit her hard in a way that was not clear to me, but it gave him no pleasure to do so. He sat with his head down, and I never saw anybody glare at anyone with the hatred as Mayella showed when she left the stand and walked by Atticus's table. When Mr. Gilmer told Judge Taylor that the state rested, Judge Taylor said, well, it's time we all did. We'll take 10 minutes. Atticus and Mr. Gilmer met in front of the bench and whispered, and when they left the courtroom by a door behind the witness stand, which was a signal for all of us to stretch, I discovered that I'd been sitting on the edge of the long bench, and I was somewhat numb. Jim got up and yawned, and Dill did likewise, and Reverend Sachs wiped his face on his hat. The temperature was an easy 90, he said. Mr. Braxton Underwood, who had been sitting quietly in a chair reserved for the press, soaking up testimony with his sponge of a brain, allowed his bitter eyes to rove over the colored balcony, and they met mine. He gave a snort and looked away. Jam, I said. Mr. Underwood's seen us. It's okay. He won't tell Atticus. He'll just put it on the social side of the Tribune. Jem turned back to Dill, explaining, I suppose, the finer points of the trial to him, but I wondered what they were. There'd been no lengthy debates between Atticus and Mr. Gilmore on any points. Mr. Gilmore seemed to be prosecuting almost reluctantly. Witnesses had been led by the nose as asses are, and few objections, but Atticus had once told us that in Judge Taylor's court any lawyer who was strict constitutionist on evidence usually wound up receiving strict instructions from the bench. He distilled this for me to mean that Judge Taylor might look lazy and operate in his sleep, but he was seldom reversed, and that was proof in the pudding. Atticus said he was a good judge. Presently, Judge Taylor returned and climbed into his swivel chair. He took a cigar from his vest pocket and examined it thoroughly. I punched Dill. Having passed the judge's inspection, the cigar suffered a vicious bite. We come down sometimes to watch him, I explained. It's going to take him the rest of the afternoon. Now, you watch. Unaware of public scrutiny from above, Judge Taylor disposed of the severed end by propelling expertly from his lips and saying, he hit a spittoon so squarely you could hear it slash. Bet he was hell of a spitball, murmured Dill. As a rule, a recess meant several general exodus, but today people weren't moving. Even the idlers who had failed to shame younger men from their seats had remained standing along the wall. I guess Mr. Hectate had reserved the county toilet for court officials. Atticus and Mr. Gilmore returned, and Judge Taylor looked at his watch. It's getting on to 4, he said, which was intriguing, as the courthouse clock must have struck the hour at least twice. I'd not heard it or felt the vibrations. Shall we try to wind up this afternoon? Asked Judge Taylor. How about it, Atticus? I think we can, said Atticus. How many witnesses you got? 1. Well, call 'em. And that is the end. Tom Robinson comes up next. Oh, so many things in here. You know, recess was called and nobody left. And Scout said the public toilet must not be open for public, otherwise they'd go and use it. No, they don't want to miss a single thing. Mayella is from a whole different kind of people. She thinks if you call her miss or ma'am, that's disrespectful because she's never had anyone treat her like that. Treat her with respect. Can you even imagine? Atticus suggests that it was her father who beat her. And there was a series of questions in here where there was no answer. She had no answer. And it was creepy. He asked, where were the children? If you screamed, where were they? No answer. Were they in the woods? Where were they? Were they at the dump? No answer. Did you scream because of Tom Robinson, or was it when you saw your father looking in the window? And no answer. Did your father beat you? No answer. I hope by now you're all forming your own opinions of what you think actually did happen. Mayella says that she asked him to come in to the fence area to chop up a chifforobe, which is like a big dresser with drawers. And she went inside to get him a nickel, and when she turned around, he was there. He was on her. He hit her. He choked her. She passed out. But then she even changed that story. We know that she was hit by someone who was left-handed. And when Tom Robinson stood up so she could identify him, it is apparent there's no way he could have hit her. His left arm is useless. It is 12 inches too short. As if it stopped growing when he was a boy and got it caught in that cotton gin. And it has like a child hand at the end. It can't grip anything with it. He's a very strong person. They talk about how you can see that in his back and his neck. Well, that's because he does everything with one arm. So there's no way he could have hit her with his left hand. And so it seems even choking her, he would have had to only use one hand to do it. And Heck Tate said it looked like there were two hands around the neck. This is difficult because it seems impossible to convict Tom Robinson of this crime. There's no way he could have done it. So in the next chapter, we will hear what he says, see how it all goes. Don't forget to take your quizzes. Don't forget to keep up. This is a great way to take in this book. Plug in your headphones. You could be doing other things while you are listening to this book and digesting it all. So when we come back, we will be on chapter 19, and Tom Robinson comes to the stand.